Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 8th of March 2023. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7RP. Lovely to see you. On tonight's show, Carl K9LA joins us live with an update on Cycle 25 and propagation for the year. An interesting Morse key. I'll talk to you later. And we find out what on earth this is. I'll tell you what, the smile in a moment, but never mind.
What?
It's all right. Anyway, we start with club news. And as we mentioned last time we met you, 2 weeks ago, the club is going to support the City of Norwich School, where we normally meet, on their Super Science Saturday, which is this coming Saturday, because next week is British Science Week, Science and Engineering Week, and they put on an event called Super Science Saturday and have asked us if we'd put on a display. So we'll be displaying many different aspects of radio and electronics at CNS. It's open to the public from 1100 to 1500, so if you'd like to go along, you can go to CNS. We're in the Skinner Centre, which is right at the back of the school, but I'm sure they'll have signs up. But primarily, I think it normally is visitors of parents with children, fairly youngish children, probably younger than the high school that it is, to sort of get a glimpse about science. We'll also be giving away 20 of this nice little Morse key.
Why are you laughing about that?
I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, and if Tammy could go on the other camera, maybe we'll just have a quick closer look at it. Now, this is inspired by the RSGB's design. Someone designed a thing called a snail Morse key. Actually, if I turn it that way around, you can see it better. And you can see it's just a cable tie. The idea of this is it's really simple and cheap, and simple though to make. And the idea is we want to let young people make this there. So we've got a block of wood. We've got a buzzer here. We've got an AA battery here. It's a 1.5 volt buzzer. That was quite hard to find. And then there's this tie wrap. And if I press it down, and I expect...
What letter was that?
No, don't say that. Don't encourage them, because I know now they're going to say, what was that? Or please send us your name in Morse, David. Whatever. Anyway, this is a nice little thing, though, that we think is seriously, we're putting together a kit of 20 of those to give away to youngsters who are particularly keen on Morse. So I think they'll go to Jim first for a session on Morse, and if they've got the aptitude and they're keen enough, we'll set them to making one of those that they can take away and take home for themselves. We're also going to show a thing called the Geochron, which is an animated live world map and lots of other ham radio features and everything. You may remember we had a feature on that with Patrick about maybe last year or possibly the year before. We're going to have a Bright Sparks display. We've got Simon and Sam will be there. Things that Tammy has made as well. We're just showing basically construction and things like that. We'll also, of course, showing local and live radio. And by that I mean we'll have radio and some basic antennas that we're going to put up for the day. But also we've got a remote radio, Maestro, which works with a flex radio remotely to Malcolm's shack, because we're hoping to run the Kablentsked and hear it there live. The Kablentsked's normally at 10 o'clock on Saturday, second Saturday of the month, but we're actually running this at 11 o'clock so that it coincides with the event being open. And there's also a display of how radio data and satellites and things like that work as well. So lots of things. You're very welcome to come along. It's designed for the public, say between 11 and 3 o'clock on Saturday. Thanks to everybody who's volunteered to help us with putting on that display. Now I want to tell you about more about the NARC annual general meeting and construction competition. I think we've got a slide for that actually, which we can show now. And it's on April the 5th at CNS. I know we've talked about it before, but it's important because we think this is a really important event for the club, and we hope as many of you are going to come to it as you can. We're not streaming this live because we want to encourage people to come. Simple as that, really. As part of our AGM this year, we've got the construction competition display, and that's from 7 o'clock when the club starts meeting there until 7:45. So I'll tell you, well, I've told you about it before, but the construction competition is open to any club member for anything that you have made yourself, electronic or radio related. It can be something like an antenna, for example, or it can be a little electronic circuit. It can be a kit, a commercial kit, or it can be something you've designed yourself. The competition is not about how complicated or impressive something is. It's about the quality of the way it's been made, how much thought has been and care has been going into that. So that's what it's about. And that's the construction competition. It will be judged also that night by Mark G0TMT, who was last year's winner. And we will hear his who he decides will be the winner just later on that evening. It's the actually AGM itself starts at 8 o'clock, and you will elect the team to run your club in 2023-24. If you wish to put your name forward, propose with a proposer and a seconder. There's a folder at the school which we've had open for the last couple of sessions, and it will be open for the next couple of sessions before the AGM. If you can't make it to the school but you want to put your name forward, we need your name, and we also need a proposer and a seconder. If you email them to us, either to myself or to the club secretary, Chris G0DWV, then we'll enter them onto that document for you. Now, also very important this, you'll also be able to vote. Whoever's there on the night that are members, you'll be able to vote on which charity the club should support this year. Now, I think most of us like to support a charity, and we'll have one or more charities which are close to our hearts. And this is your opportunity to propose it. So far, nobody has proposed one. I'm sure we're going to get some proposals, but there are only a few weeks to go. April was just around the corner. So if you'd like the club to support your charity with our fundraising efforts this year, it's important that you drop me a note on an email ideally, or see me at the club next week, and we will put that on the night to a vote, and one charity will be supported. Now, to give you some idea, the last few years at least, each year we've raised well over £1,000. Even in COVID times, we've raised money through things like the Barford event we did. So it's a significant amount of money that we're going to raise and give to a charity. It might be a local charity, it might be a charitable cause, but it's your opportunity to propose a charity that the club could support. And as I said, later on in the evening, we'll have an awards evening where the construction trophy will be awarded as judged that night, and also Speaker of the Year, which once again I'd like to mention. There is a link actually which Tammy's just put onto Facebook and onto BATC. If you haven't already seen it in the newsletter, if you haven't already voted, please do it now, because if you're watching this now, NARC Live, then that means you watch this fairly regularly, and we would love you to vote for your favourite speaker of last year. All the talks that we did in 2022, they're on this list. Very, very easy to do. If you can't do that, and it doesn't ask you for any personal information, by the way, then don't worry. You can just drop me an email with your particular vote. But it would be easier for everybody and better if you can do it that way electronically. Okay. Well, now I hope that it will be an enjoyable evening. I hope you'll be able to put that in your diary and you'll come to the club. Even if you don't often come to CNS, we would love to see as many members as possible at that event. Now, last Friday, G0KWA, Tammy and myself went to see Merv, G0HZP. As you may know, Merv is blind. He's been a member of the club for some years, and a few years ago, Sonny, Steve and myself helped set him up with a radio station from his flat. And we set him up with radios which talk, which means that he can fairly easily use them because it tells them which settings and everything he's got. Anyway, his flats were recently subject to big refurbishment, and it means that they all had to be disconnected and taken away. So Steve, Tammy and I went there to see him the other day. Tammy had a good catch up on football, didn't you? Put the world to rights on that. And Steve was reconnecting the antennas and testing them, and I was helping with that as well. So we've got a picture for you though, because this is the relevance of showing you that. This shows Merv, and if you look to the left, or about the middle of the picture actually, you can see his radio there. It's for those interested. It's an FT450 underneath for HF, and then above it is a TMV7, which is a dual band Kenwood radio, again chosen because these two talk, both of which by the way are discontinued now, so it's quite hard to buy a radio that actually has speech. Now, the relevance of showing you, though, you'll see in front of Merv is this thing, and we were intrigued when we said to him, he asked us when the club meets at the CNS so that he can come along to some of the meetings. And I said to him, do you want me to write it down on the back of an envelope and then someone can read them to you? He said, oh, no, I'll just note them down myself. He asked me to pick up this suitcase from the floor, put it on that table, opened it up, and as you can see, that is a braille punch, or a braille writer, I guess. And what was intriguing is the way that he wrote down the dates, but what I think the most significant thing, Tam, would you agree, was that there's just 6 main keys.
Yeah.
A key in the middle there,
Space.
3 each side, yeah, which is the space in the middle, wasn't it? And I thought it was incredible that with those 6 keys, he can write or type in letters and partial words, I think, and complete words or phrases. It's something, obviously, it takes some time to learn. But I'd never seen one used before. And both Steve and Tammy and myself, we were fascinated to see that, the way he noted down when the club was going to meet. So we look forward to seeing you again soon anyway, Merv, and hope you can make it. But we thought that would make a nice picture. And finally, we've heard from Merv, MI0TMW, over there in Northern Ireland. He sent us this picture of a very unusual Morse key shown by VK5PO on his website. Now, why I smiled earlier on, Tammy, is this is the picture that I meant. We do a planning and a rehearsal for this session, but you showed a picture of this Morse key. Oh. And I meant you to show you this one, because it hasn't got a key.
Oh,
and that's why it didn't quite work out with my caption. Anyway, this is a Morse key without a key. And I reckon it must work with those 2 touch pads at the front. Or do you know different?
You have to lick your fingers before you do it.
Well, I don't know. But Merv thought that was worthy of note. He wanted me to send it on to Roger and also gave it to us to feature on tonight's programme. So it was actually on VK5PO's website, or his QRZ page. And Merv sent us that. So lovely. And fascinating key. But no feedback, really. There's nothing to move. I'm not sure. The more aficionados amongst you can tell us whether that's going to be difficult or easier to use. That's it all from my talking. You'll be glad to know. Now over to Tammy with your selection of little people this week.
Yep, here's the little people this week. It's not anything to do with electronics this week, so it's to do with the season, because we had a little bit of snow today.
We did get a little light sprinkling.
So if you've got any tissues left over, this is what you can do. I wouldn't use used tissues.
Right.
I'd use a new pack of tissues.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that bit of health advice. Always good on health and safety here. That's just, what is that, Christmas cake or something like that, maybe, with some icing. And then all of those trees are just tissues.
Christmas cake, did you say?
Yeah.
It's tissues.
I know, but the base bit, I mean. Or is that all tissues?
It's all tissues.
Is it all tissues? Right, so there's no Christmas cake. It'd just be because I'm hungry. We haven't eaten anything since lunchtime, have we? Oh, and the box of tissues each end. Lovely. As usual, miniature-calendar.com. New picture every day. Tammy picks one for us. Thanks to them for letting us show this every week. Okay. I've just got a note now before we go on to what on earth. We've got a note on BATC from John, G8VPE, says that Merv passed his 12 words per minute Morse test by typing on such a machine.
He's talking about the...
Yeah, that's true. I would imagine you mean on the Morse Braille writer.
Oh, I thought you meant on the...
I don't know. Morse even. Okay, I don't know really. John, maybe you'd like to elaborate more if we've got time.
which
machine
Merv are you
did you
talking
mean?
about?
Oh, that's true, yes. Whether you meant the touch key or
I
whether you
think
meant
he means the touch key.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm going for.
All right, okay. Thank you very much for that note. Anyway, let's have a look now at the competition that we set 2 weeks ago, which we call What on Earth Is This? Now, I rather... maybe tongue-in-cheek said, I don't think anybody's going to get this quite right.
I've written on here, look, £5 bet on what on earth is it? Yeah, because...
Oh, I don't remember that.
I wrote that down 2 weeks ago because you bet me £5 that nobody get it right.
Does anybody remember that?
I remember that.
Did we record it?
Elephants don't forget, you know?
No comment. Okay, anyway, what did you make of this? If you remember this picture, and we had quite a few entries, but if you have... has anybody entered it now? We'll just check.
No, there's no extra comments for that.
Okay, all right. So these are the answers that we got. Andy M0NKR says he thinks this is a plastic tag label thing for garments, usually on socks, to hold them together when you buy them.
Julian 2E0DJR, this is a label gun for attaching price labels, etc. to anything for sale in most shops.
Steve G3VA says, is this item a tool for attaching hooks to socks, underwear, etc. in clothes shops?
Nick 2E0IBP, a wild guess, is it some kind of a device to strengthen the holes in pages before putting them into a ring binder?
Sam M7EBX says the item is for adding labels to retail clothes. I know this from my work in the Red Cross shop.
Tom G8XQD says your item is a device for inserting a display hanger to a shop's merchandise.
And Bruce G4KZT says, I think this week's object is a tagging gun. So, I suppose next we better say, what is it officially?
It is a tagging gun.
Now, okay, so it's a tagging gun.
Yep.
Now, we should tell you now at this point, as you can see on the screen, that who gave us this was James M0UKS. And I said to you, I don't think anybody's going to get this exactly right. And
Well, it's a tagging gun.
Well, it is a tagging gun, but they were all saying for attaching clothes and things like that. Now, if you know what James M0UKS and you know what he does for a living, you'll know that he services and maintains and repairs sort of vending machines and some of these clever quiz machines and everything in pubs and
Arcade
clubs
machines.
and arcade machines and things.
Yeah.
So I said I don't think they'll get this exactly right, because and when have you seen an arcade machine with a pair of socks hanging up? Be honest.
No, but it's still a tagging gun. You just don't want to pay up on the fiver, do
Well,
you?
no, I just said I don't think anybody's going to get this quite right.
There wasn't small print. Show your money.
I'm on
You owe me a fiver.
Do you take PayPal?
No.
No, okay. Okay, well anyway, well done to you all, of course. It was pretty right, you were all pretty right, and I'm being very ungenerous if I don't give you a full point. I'm sure James would agree. However, it was funny because you can see the picture on the left, it's actually showing that in one of those machines, and he adding a soft toy or something like that to hang up in them there. Not a pair of socks though, or underwear or anything else, so we don't want any more suggestions.
Andy says that I should have a £5 for each correct answer.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, that's not a good idea.
30 quid.
Anyway, thank you very much indeed for entering that. I don't remember this five. Did I actually say it on air? Did I say it on air, or was it afterwards?
Yeah, we'll play it back later.
Damn. Okay.
Anyway,
I might be
next week's.
Yeah, if you like. Okay, so what on earth is this? I'm not going to make any bets now. I'm broke. Do you know what this is? Sent to us by one of our members. Can't say any more. Quite a dull picture. Have a look. If you can't see it clearly here, we'll of course be putting it on our newsletter, on the website, and on Facebook as well, for you to guess. And we'll be with you again in 2 weeks' time, I think. Yeah, 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
And we'll tell you what on earth that is. Meantime, send your answers to radio@dcpmicro.com. before 3 o'clock on that Wednesday.
Just to clarify, the 12 words a minute was that Merv typed the braille in as the Morse was sent to him. So he passed his 12 words a minute by typing it into his machine to decode it, rather than write it down.
So it was used for that then, the braille. So it's the braille machine
braille
that we're talking
machine.
about, not the key,
Yep.
which was touch sensitive. Okay,
So that's cool.
brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Well, thanks, John. And thanks also to the comments from Paul and M1AFQ as well. And what is this on the other side? Oh no, we don't want to read that out. M0 and Chaos says Tammy should be £5 for each correct. No.
Yeah.
No. Over now. Never mind. You'll get your £5, don't worry, before I get any more debt. All right. Let's just, before we meet tonight's guest, let's just have a look at what's happening in the club this week. Now, as I mentioned earlier on Saturday, not only have we got Super Science Saturday at the school, but it's our Koblensked at the slightly later time of 11 o'clock. And this is what our friends in Germany sent us as a nice caption slide that we can show you. So it's the second Saturday of the month. It's on 7.123 megahertz actually, that should be, I think, 7.123 megahertz. And there's also a local call in on 145.250 if you want to talk to the net controller, who's Malcolm. And we're going to try and show that live at the school as well, which will be good fun. And on Sunday at 7 o'clock, it's the GB2RS News on GB3MB. On Monday at 7:30, the Monday Night Net on GB3MB. And at 8 o'clock, the 80 metre CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. And then next Wednesday, the 15th of March, we're back to meeting at CNS in person. It's a social, Bright Sparks, and an informal Raspberry Pi Jam Group checkup session, I've called it. It's just because some people have now been putting their systems together ready for our first session at the end of the month. Want to check monitors and stuff like that. That would be a really good opportunity to do that next Wednesday. It's just an informal, that's all we're going to be doing. And that's it. But we'd love to hear your stories before the next NARC Live, your pictures and mystery objects as well. Please send all of those to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com. Plus, of course, we're very happy to send this card either to cheer someone up, maybe they're not feeling very well, maybe a sympathy card version of this as well we've got. Just let us know their name, address, and we'd be very happy to send them. They don't have to be NARC members, they don't even have to be radio amateurs. We're very happy to do that. So keep your news and everything else coming to us, radio@dcpmicro.com. Now, tonight's guest is no stranger to NARC Live. He's been giving us an update on propagation since we really started this, nearly 3 years ago now. And I'm pleased to welcome him back tonight. I hope he's going to let us see his picture though, Carl. Yep, here we go. It's nice to welcome back Carl K9LA from the States. Hello, Carl.
Hello, David. Well, let me say good evening, David, and also Tammy, and everyone else in the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, and maybe others who aren't in the club yet. Who knows? I'm Carl K9LA in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And tonight I'll talk about Cycle 25 and what to expect for propagation this year. And I also got another topic that I didn't advertise, but it's in there, and we'll talk about that too.
Brilliant, of course. If I could just mention before you go into that though, Carl, that of course if you are watching this at home, you can ask questions and make comments at any time during Carl's presentation. You can do that either on Facebook or on BATC, and we'll read them to Carl at the end. But now back to you, Carl. We're intrigued to know what this other subject is as well.
Okay, good enough. Well, there's the title page. There's also an interesting picture of a spiral aurora that was seen over Tromsø, Norway, at the end of last year. It's pretty fascinating to see something like that up in the sky. So, okay.
Just to interrupt you, I don't normally do this, Carl, but I should mention to you that very, very unusually, we hardly ever see anything like this over Britain, but we have seen this in the last week or 10 days or so ago. There have been maybe nothing quite as dramatic as that aurora, but parts of Norfolk where we are, and the east coast of England, and other parts of the country as well, in the evenings on a clear night, where they have experienced some of this aurora. So it's been rather wonderful. But I thought I'd just mention that to you out of interest anyway. Although I'm sure the best auroras are seen over Norway in that area.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they are. Okay, very good. I went back and looked how many presentations I've given to the Norfolk ARC. And I started in 2017, in fact. And there's been one every year. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, past 6 years. And there's just a very short summary of what I talked about. Of course, in August 2017, we were in the decline of Cycle 24, and then started talking about Cycle 24 and 25, and then 2019, Cycle 25 started going, kinda, almost. And since then, I've given a quick update on Cycle 25 in addition to other topics. And that's what I wanted to go back and look at. What were the other topics so I didn't duplicate anything. So here's what we'll talk about tonight. Cycle 25, how's it doing? Well, if you've been active on the HF bands, especially the higher HF bands, 15, 12, and 10, I think you'll say that Cycle 25 is doing pretty good. Give a propagation forecast for 2023, what to expect on the bands. And this bonus topic is 10-meter long path. I don't know how active 10-meter long path is over there in Europe, but it can add some spice to your operating habits this spring and fall. It also should apply to 15 and 12 meters. And mostly it's discussing long path for North America, but I will translate it into what you should be able to work there from England or anywhere in the UK. Okay, let's talk about cycle 25. And it's always good to look at history. I may have shown this in the past, but it's good to review it. This is all previous 24 solar cycles. That's why we're in cycle 25, because that's the next one after 24. Cycle 1 began in 1755. That's when we, solar scientists determined we had good enough data to put the data down on paper. Maunder minimum occurred before that. And I'm sure most of you have maybe heard of the Maunder minimum when there were few sunspots. What's very obvious from that plot is we've gone through 3 periods of big solar cycles. What were big solar cycles? Well, 1 through 4, 8 through 11, and 17 through 23. They were pretty darn big. And this also says we've gone through 2 periods of small solar cycles. 5, 6, and 7 were certainly small. Cycle 6 is the smallest in our recorded history. And 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 were a little bit higher than 5, 6, and 7, but they're still small compared to those 3 big periods. Now on there, I've also annotated cycle 19. That was the largest in recorded history. More than likely, there very well could have been bigger cycles before we really started taking data. I've also highlighted cycle 21. That was a moderately big cycle. That's the blue annotation. And it wasn't as big as 19, but it was sure big enough. And in fact, cycle 21 gave us some excellent 6-meter F2 propagation. Cycle 23, well, if you take an average of all 24 cycles, cycle 23 was pretty much average. So that's an average cycle. And then cycle 24, the last one, that was a small cycle. It's the smallest in our lifetimes for sure. And it's the 4th smallest in recorded history. And that's really what we're hopefully going to answer shortly. Will cycle 25 get out of this possible 3rd period of small cycles? Or is it going to keep us in there? Because it sure looks like we've entered this 3rd period of small solar cycles. So how's cycle 25 doing? Let's get right down to the big question. Solar minimum was in December 2019. That's where the red curve starts. The red curve is cycle 25. We currently have 33 months of smooth sunspot number data. That's 3 years. So we're well into cycle 25. And all I can say is so far we appear to be tracking the small cycle 24. That's what's in green. That's what cycle 24 did up to its maximum. And it was pretty small. The orange is that average cycle 23, what it did up to its maximum. And then there's blue, cycle 21, what it did up to its maximum, which all the maximums are that X at the end of each of those 3 curves. So that's the big question. What's cycle 25 going to do? Is it going to get up higher? Is it going to kind of float around what cycle 24 did? Now, we're far enough into cycle 25 and it's high enough that we have enough extreme ultraviolet radiation coming from the sun to keep 15, 12, and 10 meters open worldwide. And in fact, we've had some great openings on those bands. Some recent contests, CQ Worldwide last October and November, and ARRLDX February and March. Earlier this month, we had some great conditions on those bands, the higher bands. You have to remember that extreme ultraviolet is the true ionizing radiation for the F2 region, which is the regions that is most important for our long distance contacts. Sunspots and 10.7 centimeter solar flux are just proxies for extreme ultraviolet radiation. Sunspots themselves don't ionize anything, and 10.7 centimeter solar flux certainly doesn't either. It's too long a wavelength, which means it doesn't have enough energy to strip an electron off an atom or a molecule. Okay, propagation forecast for 2023. In 3 words, get on 10 meters. That's what the lady's looking at her crystal ball. That's what came up. Okay, by the bands. The low bands, 160, 75, 80, 60, and 40 meters. Those bands are where ionospheric absorption is critical. In other words, D region is really a detriment to those bands. Of course, they improve significantly at night when the D region, for all intents and purposes, goes away for those bands. Now, there's a caveat here. I'm not sure what to say about 160. It should be better than it is. And that's just not my perception. I've seen lots of comments from top band people that things just aren't going as good as in past years. And of course, that brings up, what's causing it. One thing, is there something with climate change that affects 160 meters? Something happening down in the lower atmosphere? I don't know. I kind of have an urge to go see if I can understand what's going on, but right now I can't say anything. We'll just leave it where it is. 30, 20, and 17. Well, absorption is not as great as on the low bands, and you don't need as high a maximum usable frequency as on the higher HF bands, 15, 12, and 10. So what that kind of says is they're the middle bands, and they should be great all year, no doubt about it. In fact, the 3Y0J Bouvet Island D-Expedition, 30 meters was a very good band day after day, or night after night. The higher bands, well, the higher in frequency, the more ionization you need to refract it back to Earth. So that says the MUF, the maximum usable frequency, is critical on those bands. Now, where we are in cycle 25 says we're in good shape for spring contests coming up. We should be in great shape for fall and winter contests. Seeker Worldwide DX in October, November, 10-meter contest, and other stuff. So things are looking really good on these bands for this year, and probably for another year or 2 or 3. One thing you got to realize that the IARU contest in July is going to suffer from degraded summer propagation, and that has to do with the change in the atmospheric composition. You can see here's a path of the highest maximum usable frequency during the day from Philadelphia to Germany for all 12 months of the year at a given state of the sun. You can see that the fall and winter months are best for that path. And in the summer, they take a hit. But you also have to remember in the summer, that's when sporadic E can help out quite a bit. And I've operated in the IARU contest around solar minimum, and sure enough, sporadic E comes to help out quite a bit. So just don't forget sporadic E in the summer. Okay, what are the bands doing right now? Well, one way to figure out what they're doing is go to propagation predictions and run some predictions, or you can go to all those space weather parameters and try and figure out what's going on. But a very easy way is go to dxmaps.com. You can select a view. A world view is what I've selected here on the image on the right. Select a band. I selected 10 meters. And this was this morning from 1323 to 1324 UTC. Well, it should be 1321 to 1323 UTC. I got a typo there. I'll correct that. But you can see in that 1 minute period, Lots of East Coast and even the Midwest over here in North America was working Europe, South Africa, even into Russia. So the band was good, and I had expected that 12 meters was just as good, and 15 meters was also. The color codes kind of indicate the mode. Although black is says unknown, I'm sure that those should be green. There should be F2 region propagations. That propagation, and the red is sporadic E. So it looks like you were having lots of sporadic E around your noon time or so, or a little bit after. There's other methods. PSK Reporter, WhisperNet. You're probably familiar with those, or at least heard of them. There's the reverse beacon network, where you can transmit in a certain format and then go listen on software-defined radios around the world to see where you were heard. That should give you a pretty good idea what propagation is right now. And the IARU, Northern California DX Foundation beacons, they're on 2017, 15, 12, and 10. And there are 18 beacons around the world that transmit for 10 seconds. So 18 beacons, 10 seconds, that's 3 minutes. So in 3 minutes on a given band, you can determine what the worldwide propagation is by seeing how many of them you can hear. There's some software by E3NEA. It's called Pharos, F-A-R-O-S, that allows you to tie your PC into the schedule of transmission for the beacons, and then you can be sure that you're receiving the proper beacon, and you can get a signal strength or signal to noise. I don't remember at the moment, but you can collect a lot of interesting propagation information and do some analysis on that. There's another one that I find very useful, and what it is prop.kc2g.com. And I pulled this one this morning over here, which is at 13:15 UTC, with I think it's the 1:15 p.m. for you over there in Great Britain. And what KC2G does is downloads ionoson data. That's what all those dots are with numbers. The numbers indicate what the MUF was, assuming it's the midpoint of a 3,000 kilometer path. This map is updated every 15 minutes, as that's generally what the cadence is of all the ionoson recordings. And what's interesting, again, this was at 8:15 a.m. over here, and I can see that over in Europe, the MUF was well above 10 meters. And what that says is as the Earth turns, and North America comes more into daylight, we would expect to see the similar type MUFs in North America, unless there's a geomagnetic storm that might screw things up. But this is a good map of a good indication of what is going on right now, and also what could be going on in the future. All you have to do is slide the terminator left or right, and you can probably get a good idea. It'd be nice to be able to add great circle routes on this map, so you could actually see what the MUF is kind of along the whole path. Maybe that'll happen someday. Okay, 10-meter long path. That's when you turn your antenna the other way around. Not the usual way, but the other way. And what got me interested in 10-meter long path was back in 1986, the CQRY DX phone in October 86. At the time, I was K9LA stroke 5 in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. In fact, we were down there from April 79 to July 1988. And one morning, I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday morning, I heard someone call in via 6DO on the 2-meter net. Remember back in 86, we didn't have packet and all that stuff. It was mostly 2-meter nets that people called in DX. VS6DO was on 28.510. You got to remember back then, the phone band on 10 for at least for us here in the United States didn't start till 28.5 megahertz. And that was about 8 a.m. local time, and I easily worked them. I was running 400 watts to a little 3-element small tri-bander at 40 feet. So pointed the antenna to the southeast. Normally we'd point to the northwest, and he went in the log very easy. That got me started. I got long path logs from Gus, K9LA, John, NT5C, and several others. And when we finally moved back north in July 1988, I set up a sked with UJH3DPB in April 92. And like I said, I was in Fort Wayne now. And every day we checked 10-meter long path to see how open it was. And the longest duration QSO was 2 hours and 15 minutes on 10-meter long path. And that surprised me. I didn't think it would be that long. But you got to remember, April 1992 was just past the peak of cycle 22. So there were lots of sunspots, lots of extreme ultraviolet, and the geomagnetic field was very quiet. And that's what enabled the 2 hour, 15-minute QSO. In fact, on that day, it began at 6 a.m. for me. It started at 8 p.m. for you, and we went till 8:15 a.m. for me and 10:15 p.m. for you. So that was pretty interesting. And I dug into 10-meter long path even further. Now, here's a typical long path. It's from K9LA on the east coast of North America to JA, which you can also see it goes right over VK6, Western Australia. You can see on the left that you might conclude that 10-meter long path is a gray line path. A gray line path is when the entire path aligns with or is very near the terminator. That was April, but Gus also worked into VK6 and JA in October, and that's certainly not a long path, a gray line path. So it's not really a gray line path, although in March and through September it's most productive, and before March and after September it's not as productive, but it's still there. Here's the K9LA data for 1979 through December 1993. That's 2 solar cycles, 21 and 22. And you can see which months were best for him. Generally March through, let's say September to JA, and March through October for VK6. So, well, it's March, right? Right. So that means 10-meter long path should be getting pretty good for at least those of us in North America, and as we'll see shortly, for you in the United Kingdom. So what all that enabled me to do, from all the logs I gathered up from people, was put together this big picture. And we'll start at the center. This is, if you remember the old DX Edge accessory that allowed you to see where gray line was. This was before computers. You can see the date. I think it's 1981 down there in the lower right. It's 1981. Probably is. It's whatever. Okay. So what I did is included some color coding on this map. For example, the west coast of North America was green. The pinkish is the Midwest of North America, and the blue is the east coast of North America. And what I indicated is where each of those 3 regions could work on the morning long path and the evening long path from their location. For example, the west coast in green on the morning long path on 10 meters they were working those longitudes shown highlighted in green. So they were working Asia, the JA, and Southeast Asia. Their evening long path, they could work into Europe and Western Asia. So that was pretty good. The Midwest, they had some very good dual openings, morning and evening. The Midwest of North America worked in the morning. Again, Asia through Japan and Southeast Asia. The real question in Asia is there anyone there on the other end? So the path may be there, but there's nobody there to take advantage of it. And the Midwest in the evening long path, you can see Europe and a little bit farther east into Asia. And then the east coast of the US in the morning, a lot of Asia where there's not a lot of hands, but a good path into Japan and again a VK6. And their evening path should be mostly Asia, but there's not a lot of people there, so I'm not aware of any long path in the evenings from the East Coast on 10 meters. There might be some out there, but I'm not sure. For more details on my website, there's a write-up called a refresher on 10-meter long path. David, I plan to send this as a PDF to you guys, so you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, thank you. And in your website, I know you've got the full website there, but it's K9LA.us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we talked about North America. Let's talk about translating those 10-meter long path openings to the United Kingdom. What are the required conditions for long path? Well, if we go back and look at the maps, we'll see that two things happen. One, we need sunrise at one end of the path, and the other end of the path can't be too far past sunset. A couple hours, maybe several hours. Of course, the MUF has to be high enough, so that means solar minimum is not going to work. But where we are in cycle 25 should give you those conditions. You should have a morning long path just after your sunrise to North America West Coast and North America Midwest. Again, it says you'll be at sunrise. North America West Coast will be at sunset, along with North America Midwest will be a sunset. You should have an evening long path to Japan on 10 meters. This flips around. Japan should be at sunrise, will be at sunrise. And well, Japan. Yeah, okay, that bullet is a repeat kind of that. It should say that your end of the path is going to be a little bit past sunset. I'll correct that too. I thought I caught all my errors, but oh well, that doesn't happen. There might be other paths from the United Kingdom on 10-meter long path in the morning and the evening, but again, are there any hams there to take advantage of it? And that could be a big problem. So here's my summary. Cycle 25 is big enough to allow 15, 12, and 10-meter propagation on a worldwide basis. Pretty much every day, unless there's a strong enough geomagnetic storm that could screw up the F2 region. Solar maximum is likely around 2024, 2025. It kind of depends what cycle 25 does. So far, it looks like another small cycle. But like I said, it looks like the past 2 months activity has picked up. So hopefully cycle 25 is going to head up to an average cycle, which says things are going to get even better, much better than what they are right now. Even if it is a small cycle, now and around solar maximum will offer worldwide propagation with modest power, 100 watts, and simple antennas like a vertical or a dipole on 15, 12, and 10. Just like to read the comments in the soapbox on the contest results, and it's interesting to see lots of guys had problems with their normal antennas because of weather. So they were forced to use some smaller antenna, and they just had a great time on 10 meters and on 12 and 15. Well, okay, on 15 during the contest, of course. We should have more 6-meter F2 propagation this fall and winter as cycle 25 likely continues its ascent. That should make the UKSMG guys very happy. Of course, the digital modes offer an advantage over CW and sideband because they can decode a signal farther down into the noise. And that's a big deal on 10 and 6, where the maximum usable frequency, in other words, ionization, is very critical to get those bands opened. And there are tools on the internet to determine what the bands are doing right now. Take advantage of that. You can see if it's worthwhile going to check out 12 meters, 10 meters, or whatever, even 6 meters. That dxmaps.com includes bands even higher than 6 meters. So if you're interested in the higher VHF and UHF stuff, take a look at it and see what happens. So that's all I had, David.
Okay.
Get out of here. If there are any questions, I can hopefully try and answer them.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Carl. I mean, it was interesting seeing your summary at the beginning with the build up to this. As you said, you've been giving us talks from 2017. I think there were days.
I didn't realize.
The time does go.
I didn't realize that. Yeah. Wow.
Well, I mean, and time does go quickly, especially the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know about you, but that's certainly just for me. I
think I'm gonna apply for a UK passport now. Okay.
Well, yes, you certainly earned it with this. I mean, I think the way you did it before we did this NARC Live was through what we called Skype talks when we used to do that occasionally at the club. We used Skype then. We'd never heard of Zoom, as many hadn't. But anyway, this is an opportunity for you at home now. If you've got any queries or questions or maybe observations about how you've found Cycle 25. We've heard from Carl before about his predictions for Cycle 25 and others, of course, as well. Have they met up with your expectations or others' expectations? Is it delivering? It did seem to be a long while coming from when it was first mentioned, didn't it? So anyway, whatever your feelings are about propagation now, or you've got particular questions, this is clearly something that Carl studies a lot. You can ask them now either on Facebook or BATC, and we'll be sure to relay them to Carl now. Carl, I mean, I've just got a question for you before we come to some questions and comments, hopefully from people at home. I know we're only just into Cycle 25. Do you have an idea of the sort of length of time? I know it just doesn't switch off at the end, but how many, well, hopefully years are we in, do you think, for having a reasonable propagation now in our hobby?
Yeah, that's a good question, David. On average, a cycle is 11 years, right? That's where the 11-year solar cycle name comes from. There's been some solar cycles a little bit shorter, some a little bit longer. On average, the solar cycle rises to maximum in about 4 years, which means the decline is about 7 years. So putting all that together says, we should see good conditions on 15, 12, and 10 through 2024, 25, and probably 2026. But again, if cycle 25 gets bigger, that's going to get extended a bit. So until we know where cycle 25 is going for sure, all I can say is at least several more years, which, get a simple antenna up and go have fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Got a question here from, or just some feedback, I guess, from Andy M0NKR. He says there's been some good paths to AF on 6 meters, but think a mix of TEP and F2 propagation.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Hold on here. Let me go find something here.
Yeah, we can show you, we can go back to your slides.
Yeah, there it is.
Here we go. If we can.
You can see that in your area, the MUF should be high enough for an F2 hop to get to transequatorial propagation into South Africa. So,
in fact, he adds a note saying 10 meters is still open now here to NA, North Africa, I guess that is.
oh, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, NA, North America or Africa?
Oh, North America, maybe. I don't know. You were just talking about Africa. Okay.
Well, you could have. I think there have been some past tying to transequatorial propagation to South America from the UK also. So transequatorial is generally north-south, but it can vary from that and be a little bit. Let's see, where would it be? A little bit off of straight north-south. So.
Now, I think we were just looking at some of the feedback and other questions that were coming in at the beginning. But apologies if I missed this. But have you heard of a website called propquest.co.uk?
Yes. Yes.
One of our members, Jim G3LA, he designed that and has a team of colleagues who works with it as well. Is that sort of, although it's a .co.uk domain, is that useful to you as well?
Not really. It is made for the UK, but with all these real time data on the internet, propagation predictions, at least to determine what's going on now, I just don't use them anymore. Of course, if somebody asks, "Hey, what's going to happen?" Or what happened back in 73, that's when a propagation prediction will come in handy to give you an idea what was going on. But boy, these real-time applications are really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not that I'm any expert whatsoever, but a lot of weather forecasting is done by modelling, isn't it? In other words, it's based a lot on the past history, and I guess as computing power has got greater and storage and the speed at which doing that, speed at which you can look back at previous weather conditions, and I guess it's similar to propagation because they're very closely linked.
And Jim G3LA has his sporadic E predictions, which he looks at tropospheric weather and realizes that there are events that can happen in the troposphere that help sporadic E form. So it's pretty interesting. And it's a kind of a new topic, but I think it's going to be very promising.
Yeah, I can see that Jim is actually on one of our streaming platforms, so you can say hello to him if you like. And
hello, Jim.
Okay, I've got a question now from Tom GAXQD. Hi, he says, "Hi Carl, my friend recently had loss of her television signal. I said this was due to the sunspot activity interfering with the strength of our local TV, around 500 megs. Also increased interference by distant TV signals on the local frequency as the lift made distant broadcasts strong enough to jam the local. Is he right? Am I right, is what he's asking."
You said 500 megahertz?
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not sure off the top of my head what Freeview. That's quite low, I thought, for modern Freeview, as we call it here. Obviously, all television in the UK and I guess in the States is all digital now, encrypted, and I thought it was a bit higher than that. But maybe we can clarify that. I could ask Tammy.
Well, Jim might be able to answer that because I know that sporadic E at times can get up to 2 meters, 144 megahertz, and F2 propagation. I don't think it'll ever get that high. But then there's also tropospheric propagation, which can occur 432 megahertz and higher, and probably even 220 megahertz. I
I've just
don't know if
looked.
you have.
I've just looked it up actually, and it is digital TV in this country. That is, which is what we call freeview frequencies. This is not terrestrial. Sorry, not for, this is terrestrial, not dishes. Is 470 megs to 800 megs. So that's the sort of frequency that we'd be looking
I would
at.
have to guess. I would have to guess that tropospheric ducting might be the issue there for that high of frequency. Maybe Jim could collaborate.
Well, Jim,
Or
help if you
help.
can. Tony M0 TDK says, is 10-meter long path ever better than short path?
Wow, I've worked a lot of 10-meter long path, but I don't know if I've ever noticed. Probably not, because just the path distance, the free space path loss, the RF spreads as it goes on its way, and you double the distance, and that's a 6 dB reduction. But I can remember back in April '92 talking to JH3DPB, and he had a pretty darn strong signal, but probably not as much as the evening short path into Japan. So I tend to say that short path would generally be stronger than long path. But if the short path isn't open, long path really beats it by quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jim G3YLA has acceded to our wish and says, hi Carl, great to see you. Have heard of 220 megs ease in the States, but unlikely to have been ease here, and would go for tropo ducting on that one. I guess this was back to the TV interference, which Tom mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. I can remember now, where I can remember 220 megahertz sporadic E occurring over here. Not very often, that's for sure. But if you're in the right place at the right time, you may see it.
Well, someone else who's very big on the propagation scene in this country, in fact, is the chair of the Propagation Studies Committee of the RSGB. You'll probably know who that is. This is Steve G0KYA.
Yep.
And
Hi, Steve.
he said, hi, any thoughts on Scott McIntosh's work and theory as yet?
Yes, lots of thoughts. He and I have exchanged emails, and you have to remember his first prediction for cycle 25 was in August of 2020, and he predicted it would be a very big solar cycle. But then I think it was, that was June of 2020. Then in August of 2021, he reduced it to a bit above an average cycle. And that's because what he expected to happen didn't yet. And that was the what he calls the termination date, which is when he extrapolates the magnetic fields inside the sun down to the equator. And so right now their prediction, well, it's Scott and a bunch of others too, their prediction is for a bit higher than average solar cycle. All I can say is we're going to have to wait to see what happens. In the next couple of months, if the solar activity keeps picking up, then it's likely that his prediction will come true. If the sun doesn't do that, well, I'm rooting for him, for his method to happen, because it gets a little more science in depth of what's going on inside the sun. And of course, I'd like to see an average cycle as opposed to a small cycle, because I like the higher HF bands. So.
Okay. Yeah, we have had, to be honest, I can't remember if we had Scott McIntosh on us or on the RSGB webinar that we host for them. Was it here? So we have had discussion, and obviously, science is there almost to be challenged, isn't it? And disproved. There's no specifics for some of this stuff, and the research goes on and on. So
yeah, I'll take hard data over predictions any day, but I'm still rooting for Scott's prediction to come true.
That's nice to hear. Now, Roger G3LDI says, I tried to work 100 members of the it just disappeared, NCAL DX Club on LP on 20 metres and finally gave up, reaching just over 90. For that path on 20 metres, we had to beam over Italy. So if you can picture that beam, that's just a sort of feedback from Roger, really, just to say that, you know, he's tried to use, I guess, propagation to the best to get quite a way on 20 metres. Have you got any experience of that sort of operation?
No. I know that Bob Brown and M7M, I know Steve knows who Bob is, and I bet you Jim knows who Bob is. He's a silent key. But he did a year-long study on 20-meter long path from his QTH in the state of Washington. And I know he worked into Europe on quite a regular basis. And in fact, he worked into, it might have been Sweden and Norway. So that was an extremely long path. So it happens. Of course, one of the big requirements is people have to know about it and have to be there to take advantage of it. If he worked 90, that means it's a pretty darn good path, I guess.
Yeah, he didn't quite make his 100, but
just enough people weren't on.
Yeah, but it's still pretty good, isn't it?
Yes.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. And G7SZD came back and just said that TV in the UK is 470 to 700 megs, because above 700 megs has cleared for the mobile networks.
That would pretty much say it's tropospheric ducting, because it can get up there rather easily, I think.
Can I just ask, because I think we've run out of questions and comments now on there, but I just got another interesting question for you, because it's something that never far from our minds as amateurs in this country, and probably applies to you as well. How concerned are you that you're going to start, as amateurs now, generally losing some of our bands for other uses, because the mention there of is reduced from 800 megs to 700 megs to allow space for 5G network, which is getting big over here, and I guess it's the same in the States. So how generally concerned are US amateurs about the band and the fights by the amateur radio communities with things like the IARU to keep the bands that we've got?
Yeah, right now the concern over here appears to be with our 3.3 gigahertz and I think it's 5.5 gigahertz, where of course the FCC over here wants to make some money from the cellular people, just like what you mentioned. I'm not aware of anything going on at the moment for the HF bands. So at least at the moment, it's mostly very UHF type stuff, where there's lots of bandwidth, which means, your data rate can be very high easily.
Yeah, I think, certainly some of our guys over here into some of the really the low microwave bands are sort of 1.2, 1.3 gigs. They're quite concerned that they're going to lose at least some of that band, I think, maybe later this year. So there's quite big fights.
Well, the only thing, like I said, the only thing I'm aware of right now is 3.3 gigahertz and somewhere around 5.5 gigahertz. I don't know if you have bands around there or not, but
we do have those in that high. Obviously, it's less people. It's in the microwave bands, but there are, there's a lot of people very keen on using those bands, not just for television, which used to be the province for TV, because we needed a much higher bandwidth. We don't need as much bandwidth now for digital amateur television, but still, a lot of people love working those super high bands and frequencies. So, and indeed,
I believe there's a lot of networks up at the 3.3 and a 5.5 for emergency communications, MCOM type stuff.
Yeah.
So that could be kind of critical.
It's interesting to see that ICOM have just recently launched that transceiver, the 905, which I'm sure you've seen over there as well, and which is all about high bands, right up to 10 gigahertz. So
Yeah.
they must be reasonably confident, even though it's a fairly specialist and relatively expensive radio, they must be fairly confident that those bands will still be open to amateurs for the years to come.
Maybe it works on other services on those bands.
Yeah, well, maybe.
They don't care if it's hams or whatever else.
Yeah, some of the radios are sort of side developments, aren't they? From transceivers for other types of services. But anyway, that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Thank you very much indeed, Carl. I've got one other final note from Steve G0KOA. He just says that Bob N7NM wrote great books on HF and LF propagation, which are available on Carl's website.
Yes. Yeah, there's some really good ones. I usually refer to his first one, which was The Little Pistol's Guide to HF Propagation. It's a very good read. It's not like Ionospheric Radio by Davies, which is very technical. It's an easy read, and people can get lots of good information about it.
And they can get that from K9LA.us.
Yes. It's about a 15 megabit, whatever. But that shouldn't be a problem nowadays.
Not nowadays, is it? No. Carl, it's been lovely to see you again. It's nice to see you every year for an update, and you've given us some other things to think about as well this year. So it's really good to see you, and of course we hope to see you again later in this year or maybe next year. But thanks once again to you, Carl, and take care. K9LA.
Okay, let me stop sharing here. I can get out of here. There we go. Okay.
All right. Many thanks, Carl.
Tammy.
Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
There we are. Latest on propagation. And it is important. And I know many of you look at that. It's interesting, Carl's take on, forecasts, really. Interested in data, which is based on facts, what has actually happened. But of course, without forecasting, then we're all going to just wake up in the morning and just see what we can do with the band. So got to be a room for a bit of both, I guess. Anyway, many thanks indeed to Carl, of course. And just time to let you know what's happening at the club again this week. So Saturday, we've got the Koblenz Sked at 11 o'clock this week on 7.123 megahertz, because we're at Super Science Saturday at the CNS school between 11 and 3 o'clock. Maybe see some of you there. On Sunday, the GB Taurus News is on at 7 o'clock on GB3NB. And on Monday, the Monday Night Net is on at 7:30 on GB3NB, followed by the CW 80 meter net on 3.543 megahertz at 8 o'clock. And then next Wednesday, the 15th of March, we're meeting at the CNS school between 7 and 9:30 with a social Bright Sparks for our younger members, and also an informal Raspberry Pi Jam group session to check up on your systems before the first real formal session of the Raspberry Pi Jam at the end of the month. And then, of course, we'll see you again here on NARC Live in 2 weeks' time. Take care until then. Lovely to see you. Don't forget to keep sending your news and views into us. And until then, from Tammy M0GC.
Bye-bye.
And from me, David G. Sivny RP. Take care. Bye-bye.